All right, thought I'd give you a little bit of help in regards to some of the questions from assignment number 1 that we can look through and kind of work on some of the tricks to be using in this section. So again, assignment number 1, here we go. So this is number 21. It's asking you to find the standard form of an equation of a line that is perpendicular to y equals. So they already have it in y equals mx plus b. That's the equation that is already given for the line. You're going to create a standard form equation of a line that is perpendicular that contains the point -2, -8. So the first thing that you have to make sure is this equation that they give you in y equals mx plus b form? If it is, you're ready to go. If not, you're going to have to reorganize. So we're going to use y equals mx plus b. Now, in the main video for this, I showed you doing it through point slope. So I'm going to give you this way through y equals mx plus b because that's the way that you're going to be expected to do it. So here we go. So we're going to start with round 1. Y equals mx plus b. Now, one of the things that we know, because it's been given to you already, is lines that are perpendicular, the slope is a negative reciprocal. So this is something that you have to remember or go back and look at, because that's how you get your slope for the new equation. So the new equation is going to have a slope of a negative reciprocal of this. So that means if it's negative already, and I'm going to take the negative reciprocal, that gives me 2 negatives, that makes it a positive, and I'm going to reciprocal it, which gives me 9/7. Now, I'm going to use this point and this slope, and I'm going to put it into y, m, and x. And what I'm looking for again in round 1 is I'm always looking for b. So here we go. So I've got y equals, I know what my y is, it's now -8. I know now what my slope is, it's going to be 9/7. I know what my x is, that's -2, and that's plus b. So here we go. So I'm going to simplify this part right here, nothing reduces. So I have -8, 18, which is now negative over 7 plus b. Now, we can get rid of the fraction right now, again, by multiplying through the distributive property times a 7, which means I'm going to have to distribute the 7 throughout here. So I have a negative times a positive gives me a -56 equals, my 2 7s will reduce, leaves me with a -18 plus b. Now I'm going to solve for b in this case. So I'm going to get rid of my 18, subtract my 2 numbers, this gives me a -38. So now I have b, I have my slope, so in round 2, I'm going to go back and I'm going to use again y equals mx plus b. But now in this case, I'm only going to put in m and b. So I have y equals 9/7 x. My b I solved for, which was -38, goes here. Now, I can move everything over in regards to the x, or I can take care of getting rid of, oh, excuse me. I did. I forgot the 7, didn't I? So let's go back to this point. This should be plus 7b. So I forgot to multiply my 7 times my b. So that changes things. So this is still going to be -38. Now equal to 7b. I'm going to divide by 7. this is going to give me a b that equals negative 38 sevenths. Now, pull this back up, gives me that. Now I'm back to where I need to be. So now I'm going to get rid of my fractions because I have to put it in standard form. So I want to deal with the fractions first. So again, I'm going to go back to the distributive property. I'm going to multiply by 7 here. Now, again, I'm going to try and remember everything here. So 7y equals, my 7's reduce, 9x, again my 7's reduce, to give me a negative 38. Now I have to put this in standard form, which means, again, I'm going to have to move my x. So I'm going to move my x over here. These will go to 0. So I have negative 9x plus 7y equals a negative 38. Now x can't be a negative, so again I'm going back to the distributive property, multiply by a negative. So this gives me a negative or positive 9x minus 7y equals a positive 38. So for question 22 from assignment 1, now I want to make a parallel line, but if you notice, my first equation they're giving me is not in y equals mx plus b. So my first step that I have to do is I have to take my negative x minus 2y equals 3 negative, and I have to change it to y equals mx plus b. So again, I'm going to move my x, negative 2y, 8x minus 3, and now I'm going to divide each term by negative 2. So y equals negative 4x positive 3 halves. So now is when I can use this equation, because this is the line that's already on the graph. I'm going to make a line parallel to that through this point. Now remember, parallel lines, like we said last week, same slope. So now I have information. So I know that I have 1 negative 5 for my new equation. That's where it's going to go through. And my slope is exactly the same as what is in this equation, which is negative 4. So I have 2. Now, the nice thing about this one is they just want it in slope-intercept form. So, saves me a little time on the back end, which you'll see in a second. So, now I'm going to go through, and I'm actually going to put this in. So again, I start with slope form, slope-intercept. I'm going to throw in my slope, x, and my y. So my y is negative 5. My slope is negative 4. My x is 1. And I've got b. So again, I'm looking for b in this case. So here we go. I have negative 5, negative 4, plus b. I'm going to solve for b. Add my 4. B becomes negative 1. So I know what my slope is because it's the same as what it was in my original equation. I now know what my b is. So go back to round 2. I'm going to go back to this, but I'm going to again just put in what I know for slope and now what I found for my b, and there's my answer. So now we're solving through such systems of elimination. So again, did a foldable on this. You watch the video. Now, again, what I'm looking for is my coefficients first. The first thing I look for is 2 things. 1, do they have different signs? And 2, are they the same number? If they're not, then I just got to choose one of the letters to get rid of. Doesn't matter which one it is. So I'm going to get rid of x. So in order for me to do that, I've got to make my x's both something that they 3 and 2 multiply to. Keep it simple. So what I'm going to do, and I also have to make sure it's negative. So when I do this, I'm going to say I know 3 times 2 is 6. So I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to multiply it by -2. I'm going to multiply this equation by +3. Now, that reorganizes my equations. So when I distribute, I'm going to distribute it through each part of this. So I've got 2 of these. So my new equations that I'm going to be having are, I have a -6x, a -8y, and I have a +12. For my second equation, I have a +6, I have a +9, and I have a -15. Now I can solve. So my x's are going to go to 0. I have difference of signs. I'm going to subtract, larger number carries, so I have y equals. And I subtract here, larger number carries, so I have a -3. So I know part of my solution is y equals -3. Now I have to go back to the original equations, pick one of them, and then put this y in for y. So I'm going to pick the bottom one. So I've got 2x plus 5. This is where I'm going to substitute my -3 in for my y, equals a -5. Now I'm solving for x. So I'm going to simplify this part. So I have 2x minus 15 equals a -5. So I'm going to solve for my x. So I'm going to add, subtract, larger number carries, and I'm going to divide. So my x value comes out to be 5. So my ordered pair that I would find is I have a -3 for my x, -3 for my y, and a +5 for my x, and that's my final answer. Same situation here. Again, I'm looking for the same coefficient. I don't have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get rid of, in this case, the x for this. So I'm going to take this bottom one and I'm going to multiply by a -3. So my new equation for the bottom, here's my top one. That one doesn't change because I'm not multiplying anything. My new one on the bottom, once I distribute, is going to be a -3x, a -9y, and a -33. Now I can combine these. Again, my x's go to 0. I'm going to have 3y equals, I'm going to subtract those two. So again, 51 minus 33. So I'm going to borrow, show you all the steps. So I've got 18. And it's going to be positive. Now I'm going to solve for y. Y equals 6. So now I go back to my original equations, and again I'm going to pick the bottom one because it's easier, it's smaller. So I'm going to put my y in for my y letter up here. So I have x plus 3 times my 6 equals 11. So I'm going to simplify and solve for x here. So x plus 18 equals 11. I'm going to solve for this by subtracting. X equals a -7. So my two answers are -7, +6. Here we go again. We're looking at this. Now, if you notice, I do have a letter that has the same coefficient, but they don't have the same sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply take the top one and I'm going to multiply it by a negative. That's all I'm going to do, because all I want to do is change the sign so I have one that's the same number but different sign. So when I do that, all this becomes for my new equation is -2x positive 2y, positive 3. Now my bottom one stays the same. So now I can combine these two because my y's are going to go away. So now I have a negative x equals 4. Well, I got to solve for x, so I got to divide by a negative, makes it a positive, which makes my 4 negative. Now, again, I'm going to pick the bottom one because it's the easiest one to work with. So I'm going to take x, which in this case I just found to be negative 4 minus 2y equals 1. So I'm going to add 4 to this one, 4 to this one. I got negative 2y equals 5. So I'm going to divide here by a negative 2, and I end up with y equals negative 5 over 2. Leave them as impropers, don't change them. So my answer would be negative 4, negative 5 halves. So we're back to writing an equation again. But again, notice this equation is not n equals y equals mx plus b. So I have to make it that way. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to move my x. So I have negative x minus 1. And then I'm going to divide by a negative 3. So this gives me a positive 3/8 x. This gives me a positive 1/3. So that's the equation that I'm going to be already using to help me with this. So my point is going to go through 3, 7. I'm creating a perpendicular line. So I have a point of 3, 7. Now my slope, because it's perpendicular, is the negative reciprocal of this. So I'm going to have a negative 3/8. They want the equation in y equals mx plus b form. Again, helps because it saves some time. So let's start it off here. So we're going to start with y equals mx plus b. I'm going to put in my y, which is 7. I'm going to put in my slope, which is negative 3/8. I'm going to put in my x, which is 3, put that over 1, and I'm going to solve for b. So I have 7 equals, nothing reduces, so I have negative 9/8 plus b. So again, I'm going to solve for b in this case, but I'm going to get rid of my fractions. So I'm going to multiply times 8 here, here, and yes, I'll remember to do that here. So I have 56 equals negative 9 plus 8b. So I have a positive 9 gives me 8b. So I'm going to add here, that's going to be 65. I'm going to divide by 8. I'm going to get rid of that. And my b equals 65 over 8. I'm not going to simplify it, not going to put it back into y equals mx plus b. Okay? So I'm going to go back up here where my equation starts, and I have my information. So my y equals, I'm going to put my slope in, which is negative 3/8 x. My b, which I just found, is 65/8. And I can leave it that way because they want it into y equals mx plus b. So again, we've got one more here on writing an equation. This one is parallel. Our equation is already into y equals mx plus b, and they give us a point. So And the nice thing is they want it in slope-intercept form. So I've got y equals mx plus b, and start from this. I'm going to throw in my points. I have a -5. I have a slope. Now, parallel, same slope. So I have -4 times the -6, which is my x. So I have -5 equals +24 plus b. So I'm going to solve here. Oops. 24. Those go. I'm left with -29. So now I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to put it into y equals mx plus b form. So I have y equals, same slope, -4, x, and my b now becomes -29. So again, we're back to elimination. So again, I'm looking for, do I have different signs? And I do. I have different signs from my top to my bottom for both of my x and y's. Now it's just a preference of which letter you want to get rid of. I'm going to multiply and get rid of the y. So all I have to do in this case is simply take this one and multiply it times 4. So my new equation, once I distribute, is going to look like 8x minus 4y equals -8. Bring my other one down. Plus 4y, +8. So now, if I simplify this, look what happens here. My 8x goes away. My 4x and 4y and 4y go away. So what I'm left with is I have 0. On the right-hand side, I have a -8 and a +8. That also goes to 0. The question now is, does 0 equal 0? The answer is yes. Well, what does that mean for my answer? Well, if you look up at your answers, it has 2 of them that have points. Well, I didn't get a point, so I know B and A are out. I have many solutions, and I have what's called inconsistent, which is no solution. Well, if I look at what I have something that equals each other once I lose everything. That is a many-solution system, meaning the equation's the same, it would be the same line. So, in closing, make sure equation is in y equals mx plus b when you're writing the equation. Perpendicular lines, slopes are negative reciprocals. Parallel slopes are the same. Elimination look for same coefficient, different sign. If not, multiply to make it that way. Use the examples. You're going to have to. This is a major part of what you're going to be working on in the algebra section. So hopefully this will help you. Until I get back, here you go.